Well, we were looking forward to week one of the finals, and they didn't disappoint, did they? All four games were terrific viewing, culminating in one of the most extraordinary games of rugby league we have ever seen. Welcome to another edition of the Billy Slater Podcast. We do it all thanks to Tab. Billy, wow, can we breathe again after what we witnessed yesterday? Unbelievable. How are you?
Oh, I'm well, Salty. I still can't believe it. Honestly, the way that final series has started, it just kept getting better and better as each game progressed over the weekend. And like you said, culminating in this epic battle of 94 minutes yesterday at GIO Stadium in Canberra. There's so much to talk about throughout this game. We're probably going to have to nearly dedicate this whole podcast to the Canberra Broncos crazy game that we saw yesterday. There was drama. It was the longer the game went, the more I felt for the team that was going to lose, because not only were they going to give up a direct route to the preliminary final, they were going to have to back up in a short succession later after a grueling contest, like 94 minutes. The disappointment and the emotion that goes along with it, the Raiders are going to have to pick themselves up off the floor and go again.
Yes, we'll talk about that because they've got the Sharks back at home, though. At least they're back at GIO Stadium this coming Saturday night, and the Sharks were good against the Roosters. Folks, don't worry. We will cover the other games as well, but we've got to focus on what we witnessed in the nation's capital. Starting off with Kotoni Staggs. You talk about him being the heartbeat of this Broncos team. He was fired up early. Brisbane started so well. They went try for try, then some ill discipline led to Canberra leading at half-time. What was your thoughts there, Billy, when they went to the break and Canberra had wrestled the game away from Brisbane? Of course, it was still in the balance, but they were on top going into the break. Yeah.
Look, it was a seesawing first half. 12-all at one stage there. Broncos got away to a really good start. Nice little set play. Brought Kotoni Staggs from the right-hand side all the way over to the left-hand side. And I thought the Raiders really struggled to contain Kotoni Staggs all afternoon. I thought he was wonderful. He's like trying to contain a frog in a sock. He just goes berserk. You can't get your hands on him. He's so powerful. And I thought he had a terrific game. Scored the first try, and then the Canberra Raiders put a couple of nice little kicks in to score some points to give themselves the lead, and the Broncos come back. So it was a really close first half, and then to start the second half, they just kicked away a little bit. The Raiders they were leading by 10 points when all hell broke loose with 25 minutes to go, and we saw 3 sin binnings, and I really thought the Raiders were going to go on with it. Then they scored the first try after playing against 11 men. They had 12 themselves. Hudson Young in the sin bin, Reece Walsh and Carrigan went to the bin, and Ethan Strange scored a try, and that put them out by 16 points. I really thought that they could have went on with the game. They'll look back in the review and think that that's an opportunity missed, because they really stopped playing. They literally stopped playing the way that they have been playing all year, and Reece came back on the field and he's done what he's done over the last 4 or 5 weeks. He's single-handedly put points on the board. It's an incredible achievement that the Broncos have gone down to Canberra, the minor premiers, and have beaten them under all sorts of challenges and hurdles, but at the end of the day, it's been their star fullback that's really stood up over the last 4 or 5 weeks, and he did it again. He pulled his team out of the fire.
Just on that, and we'll get back to how this crazy game did go, but Reece's performance yesterday, I mean, we saw one similar when Nathan Cleary took control of the 2023 grand final. Is that the most recent comparison you can make to an individual just lifting their team from the brink?
Yeah. And look, it's... Why wasn't it there for the first 3 quarters of the game? That's the question mark for me. I watched the Broncos, and the Broncos are doing an amazing job, right? But for the majority of their performances, they try and play this conservative type game. And that actually holds Reece out of the game. And then when he got sin bin, there was nothing to lose. 16 points down, coming back with 15 minutes on the clock, he had to go after it, and they got him the ball. Whereas the first 50, 55 minutes, that Reece hardly got the ball in those situations. So you've got to be brave in our game. You've got to be courageous, and sometimes that you have to go after your football. So I think there's a message in there for the Broncos. They need to play that style of football when the game is on the line, when it's 12-all, instead of playing this conservative type game that all of a sudden they got behind, because you can't do that again. You can't get behind by 16 points with 15 minutes to go on the clock and think that you're going to pull it out like you did. Like the Raiders' edge defence was awful. That's a real concern, going into not this week but the rest of the final series, especially the right-hand edge. There were points and there were deficiencies all over the place, and it's not a one-off. That's a regular occurrence for the Raiders. It's been a real issue for them going into the game, and it was an issue, or it was the issue, on yesterday afternoon.
And we'll get to their game against the Sharks in just a moment, because the Sharks, especially their outside men, were very good against the Roosters on Saturday night. Now, I know that you and I weren't working yesterday. We were just watching the game as rugby league fans away from the game. But I know there was chaos with our 9 colleagues, Billy, because they nearly wrapped the game up and through to the news after 80 minutes, after 90 minutes, after, 2 or 3 times they nearly went to the news. It was crazy.
I'm getting flashbacks. Like I'm like, oh, that's right. That's right. On full time, the Raiders were in front by 2 points?
By 2, yeah.
Reece Walsh goes for a 2-point field goal. It gets charged down. Gemmet Shibazaki gets caught with the ball. Full-time siren goes. Raiders celebrate. Full-time, 80 minutes. Hang on. I actually thought Ashley Klein blew full-time. And then it comes back and says, hang on, we need to have a look at the contact on the kicker. Now, there was contact on the leg of Reece Walsh. It wasn't huge, but the way that they've been ruling this rule, it's a penalty. But it's not a penalty from 40 metres out. It's a penalty from right in front. That's a give me 2 points. And then it goes to extra time. It's not golden point. It's 5 minutes each way. End of the 5 minutes, still level. Getting towards the end of the second 5 minutes, Canberra put up a bomb. It's deflected off Stewart, back into the hands of Fogarty. He scores under the post. Canberra celebrate again. During all this time, Reece has kicked a field goal from, it's probably nearly 40 out, and hits the crossbar.
Yep.
There were so many different dramatic moments in this game. So Canberra are celebrating after extra time like they've won the game. Ricky Stewart's going off on the sideline, and the players are celebrating like they're going towards a preliminary final. Epic encounter against the Brisbane Broncos. Hang on. Try's not confirmed yet. Knock on. There's a slight knock on, which is the correct call, but it adds to the drama. Then we go into actual golden point. So this is the end of 90th minute. Flashbacks are just coming back. I'm going, that's right. Look at all these moments. We haven't even spoken about Ben Hunt kicking the field goal yet.
No.
What a moment that was. He's come back to the club that he started his career at. And we all know what happened in 2015 in the grand final. And, it was a similar game there where Jonathan Thurston was the hero. Now Ben Hunt's the hero. And he's put his team into a preliminary final. It's going to be an incredible atmosphere at Suncorp Stadium in 2 weeks' time. And they're 80 minutes away from a grand final.
Extraordinary. I just had more flashbacks there too, Billy, because Canberra's experienced that before with field goals hitting the crossbar and coming back. Benny Elias in the 1989 grand final. He was. I know last night wasn't a grand final, but it's one of those games that will be talked about, and there'll be more moments that will come up the more we reminisce on the game. It was just, I know sometimes when we see a finish like that, we can get caught up with, oh, wow, what about that? But it might mask what we experienced throughout the 80, or in this case, 94 minutes. But that game was just spectacular from go to woe.
Oh, look, I don't like it. You know, when you're in the moment, you always say, "Oh, that's the best I've ever seen." I can't think of a game like the 2015 Grand Final is probably the closest to being the most dramatic situation I've ever seen in a big game like that. That's probably the best game. I felt sick sitting on the couch watching it yesterday. I honestly, the longer it went, I was just like, one of these teams has to lose and play next week. Like this is huge stakes. Wow, that's one of the best games I've ever seen. Probably the best game I've ever seen in my life.
Ricky Stewart spoke afterwards about the players will lift him and he'll lift the players to get ready for Cronulla this week. Ricky is experienced at this time of the year. He's still got a few players from 2019 that are still around, particularly his two big men in Joe Tapine and Josh Papali'i. So they're going to be key this week, aren't they? Those three, the coach and the experienced players in the team to lift this side so they can go again against the Sharks on Saturday night.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought it was that was a courageous effort from Big Papa. You know, he was in doubt all week with an ankle injury, and by all reports, he was touch and go. And he did. If you didn't know, you wouldn't have known. He was unbelievable. He was great to start the game. I thought he laid an incredible foundation. Now, for those three leaders of the Canberra Raiders, they need to lift themselves first. As a leader, you need to get your job done, and you need to lift yourself before you can lift anyone else. And that's going to be the big task for those three. Is they've got to pick themselves up off the floor. Nearly put your emotions aside and the disappointment aside, and move on real quick. They've only got a 6-day turnaround, and they're taking on a team that are flying at the moment. The Sharks they didn't just flick a switch in September. They've been flying for a while now, the Sharks, and they're putting it all together. They're very healthy, apart from Cam McInnes, who's out with an ACL injury. He's out for the year. Apart from Cam McInnes, they have a full roster to pick from. I think Tom Hazelden pulled out late from the game. He potentially could be available as well, but I don't know if you change the team. I think they're flying. They've got a real feel about them at the minute, and they get the extra 24 hours preparation into this one as well. So they'll be going down to Canberra really confident for that Saturday night clash with the Raiders. And it's a big task for the Canberra Raiders because you don't want to go out in straight sets after winning the minor premiership. That's not a tag you want.
Billy, you mentioned something earlier I just wanted to get into just for a little bit, and that is the edge defence of the Raiders and the points that they conceded, particularly down their right side. Now, that's a strength of the Sharks, and it's where they really exploited the Roosters on Saturday night. And one player who came off the bench, he may well start this week, Britton Nickera, comes into the team. Teague Wilton's been playing good footy. I think the return of their centres as well, and Kale Iro in the last few weeks, and then Jesse Ramian just before the finals. They'll be confident, Cronulla, going into this one.
Yeah, and make no mistake, they will be attacking their left-hand side. They will be attacking on the left-hand side of the field of the Sharks, which is the right-hand side defence of the Raiders. And not just do you have to recover physically and emotionally from the Raiders' defeat, you've got to fix some holes. You've got to start plugging some holes and making sure you're defensive sound. Like 29 points in a finals game after being the minor premiers. Like, defence is key at this time of the year. You have a look at how many points the Panthers conceded. 8 points. The Panthers know how to get it done at this time of the year, and we'll get onto their game shortly. But you have to get your defence rock solid at this time of the year. Your attack will come, but your defence is priority at this time of the year.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we totally leave Sunday's game alone, and as you said, we're going to talk about it for days. Forget about minutes and hours and all that sort of stuff. You can talk about it for days. Brisbane now have the break, and they're back home for a preliminary final. Now, as we're recording this, we don't know the results of the match review, but Billy, they could well have Ezra Mam, Adam Reynolds, but the key one I think, and get your thoughts here, is Xavier Willison. Looks like he'll be available. And wasn't he impressive in that back end of the season before he broke his arm?
Yeah, he was. He's had a great season. The great thing about Xavier Willison is he's had a broken arm. He hasn't had a broken leg. So he's been able to train. That's the key for these big men coming back into these games is the kilometres in their legs. So, for the last month, Xavier Willison would have been running the house down. So that's an important factor when you're thinking, okay, does he come back in or is he a little bit underdone? Surely he's going to be match fit underdone, and so will the other three. I don't know if you can put all three of them in the team. I don't know if you can leave three of these players that have got the job done over the last 5 weeks out. That's the headache that Michael Maguire will have now is, do they all come back in? And if so, who do you leave out? I think Adam Reynolds comes back in. I think he makes them a footy team. Ezra Mam, I'm not sure. That would mean you would have to leave, 2 out, whether it's Corey Pakes and Tyson Smoothie. I don't know if you could change Billy Walters. He's doing a wonderful job. There's so many headaches. And just on the incidences, like we've got Reece Walsh and Pat Carrigan. They're the nervous ones for the Broncos. And by the time this podcast goes to air, it's probably going to be out, the findings of whether they're suspended or not. Pat Carrigan hasn't had a suspension all year. He hasn't had a fine all year. So he's got a clean sheet. So if it's a grade 1, it will be a fine for Pat Carrigan. And I think if they find a grade 1 in Reece Walsh as well, I think that will be a fine. I hope they don't miss the game. I don't think those 2 incidences were enough to miss a preliminary final. That's just my opinion. But it'll come down to the match review committee, and I don't know. I just have a feeling that they'll both be there.
There were no failed HIAs from either player involved in either incident either,
and they do take the injury into account.
Yes, as
like Hudson Young.
Hines.
I don't even know. Like one thing that might go in Reece's favour is his hair. Like you don't know where the contact is because his hair is so thick, and even with that, like seriously, what's Hudson Young doing? What's he doing? Like we've seen this sort of incident over the course of the year, with Spencer Leniu up against the Dolphins, agitating, and even with the Melbourne Storm against the Bulldogs about a month ago, Grant Anderson rubbed someone on the head, and the penalty went against Grant Anderson. So they got the ball because of a drop ball. Anderson rubbed someone on the head, and the penalty went against the agitation. So, the history has been there. So Hudson Young getting up in the grill of Reece Walsh, I don't know what he was doing. And then Reece had enough of it, so he stood up for himself. So, look, I don't condone either party, but, I think the referees handled it okay. I would have been okay for them both to stay on the field. That would have been my preference. But they both went to the sin bin. Fair enough. Pat Carrigan caught someone high. Fair enough, went to the sin bin. Canberra Raiders had it in their hands. It was up to them. They had the game in their hands and they let it slip.
Yes, they did. Now they'll take on the Sharks. Let's talk about the Sharks and get into the other games now. Billy, Shark, very impressive against the Roosters at home on Saturday night. You and I were there. That was a professional performance from Cronulla. Yeah,
there were 2 key factors for me for the Cronulla Sharks. The first one was the second half. I thought they handled the onslaught from the Roosters. The way the Roosters came out in that second half was intense. It was physical. They dominated field position, but the resilience of the Sharks just held them in there. They stayed in the contest and they just worked as a team, and that's where Craig Fitzgibbon has really got this footy team. That's the confidence in them. And the other thing was when they got their opportunity, the classy moments belong to Braden Trindall. I thought Braden Trindall was the difference in terms of the class. Sam Walker had a nice little moment, but Trindall had 2. He had 2 classy moments. There was only 3 tries scored by the Sharks. Trindall set both of them up for Ronaldo Mulatalo, and the other one came with Toby Rudolph, which was a great moment towards the end of the game. But yeah, he was the difference. He had a couple of really nice kicks out of trouble, but the way that the Sharks just stayed in the contest when the intense onslaught of the Roosters field position battle was well in swing, especially in that second half. That's what kept them in the game, and that's what essentially has sort of got them to week 2 of the finals.
What about that moment for Toby Rudolph, eh?
He loved it, didn't he? And you could see how popular he was within the group. He stormed over. He had a bit of work to do. He had to run over James Tedesco. His captain, Blake Brayley, he picked him up short last tackle. Could have went to either half, but he trusted him and went straight over. And first try of the season for Big Toby. What a way to do it. Yeah,
absolutely. And that was a good battle. Not often we focus on wingers' battles, but I enjoyed it. Mulatalo up against Nwanganita-Waze, and Mulatalo, well, he reminded us he was in front on points at half-time in the interview that he did with us on 9 with Alana Ferguson, but he won the battle in the end.
He did. Oh, and, I love the personality too. The personality that he acknowledged it. He acknowledged that, Nwanganita-Waze is in a great vein of form at the moment, and he's flying. And he showed some special touches and moments in the game as well, Mark. And Big Ronaldo, he was up for the challenge. I think he ended up, with a points win. Obviously scored a couple of tries. Mark scored the first one, and then Mark put him in the touch in the second half at one stage, and you just saw on Ronaldo's face, he was like, "Yeah, okay, you got that one. Yeah, all right, we're in this. I see the scoreboard."
Yep, yeah, it was good. It was really good. I was just thinking, Billy, about the Sharks. They've been their opponents this week, obviously Canberra, which we've spoken about. Cronulla's been in this situation when they had to play a Golden Point game a few seasons ago. They lost to the Cowboys. Valentine Holmes field goal. Next week, they got bounced out. So it is hard to recover after that extra time win. So they'll know that fast start this week against the Raiders, because they'll know they've been in that position that Canberra find themselves in.
Well, I think all the pressure will be on Canberra. They're playing at home again. They won the minor premiership. They've just let this game slip. They should be sitting there with a week off. Like 15 minutes to go, and you're up by 16 points. That shouldn't happen. And the Broncos let the grand final slip in 2023. Like these moments stay with you, and how much of a hangover will it be? Well, that's up to them. How quick they'll get over it. But I think the pressure is certainly on the Raiders this weekend. With the Cronulla Sharks flying, they have got so much momentum at the moment, and they play a free style of football. So if it's a dry night down there in Canberra on Saturday night, it could lean into the hands of the Sharks in the way that they play.
All right, and the early forecast is it's going to be a cool night, but a clear night in Canberra on Saturday night. I had to have a look, Billy. Pack the thermals. Anyway,
I'm sure you'll do better than Jonathan Thurston.
Well, at least I'm up in the commentary box. JT, what about the weekend he had? Which does take us to the game that he was at, because not only was he in Canberra yesterday, he was across the Tasman for Panthers against the Warriors. Billy, we spoke a lot in the lead up to the finals, how the Panthers were readying themselves for 4 tough September games, and that they were on song against a Warriors team that threw everything at them on Saturday.
Yeah, atrocious conditions. The wind was coming in sideways. It was raining to start the game, and I just know Nathan Cleary would have just gone, okay, well, these are the conditions. I'm going to play to the conditions, and this is in my hands. He's a player that likes to take control of the game anyway, and when you play in those conditions, your kicking game is so important. He had a plan to kick early in the tackle count close to the line and run the ball late. So kick on 4th tackle or 3rd tackle even, and then run the ball on the 5th tackle, which set up their first try. Isaiah Papali'i was so powerful coming off the bench, and it wasn't until he came on that they scored the first try under the post, and it was on the last tackle, running the ball on the last tackle off Nathan Cleary. I thought it was a masterclass of how to control a game. And the Warriors, let's be honest, they've been wobbling for a while. That was their 8th I think they've won 2 games in the last 8 games. And that was the straw that broke the camel's back, and they just lacked that little bit of class. When they lost their halfback Metcalf halfway through the year, they just couldn't recapture the form that they had in the first half of the season. And unfortunately, they bow out, and the Panthers progress, which makes them even more dangerous.
Yes, and they'll head to a core stadium this coming Sunday.
Did you see the little push and shove with Moses Leota and James Fisher-Harris? Obviously, best buddies, Premiership winning front rowers together.
They've got a coffee business together, don't they?
A coffee business. Well, I wonder if they'll sit down and have a coffee and just sort out the differences, because there was a little bit of push and shove. I actually didn't mind it. We all know that they're great mates, and they're the enforcers in their footy team, and they've done so much together. Not just for the Panthers, but for New Zealand as well. And then they both stood there, eye to eye, and just said, nah, we're playing for our clubs now. We're playing for our own teams, and we're not taking a backward step. I actually think it was Moses Leota that actually started the push and shove. So I'm sure they would have had a giggle after the game and a little handshake or a cuddle or something like that. But yeah, I actually didn't mind it. I was like, this actually means something, and when you're committed to your team, you're committed to your team. So, yeah, it was interesting.
It was great to watch. It was great. Yeah, loved it from a fan's point of view, that's for sure. So, Panthers now take on the Bulldogs, and it was a gallant Bulldogs team that went down to Melbourne on Friday night. They had so much adversity, the early HIA to Viliami Kikau, the injury to Stephen Crichton, but they kept hanging in there. The Dogs, Billy, against a Storm side that just know how to get the job done.
Super brave by the Bulldogs. They lose Viliami Kikau for 15 minutes with a HIA. He's playing with a fractured eye socket, by all reports, which is incredible. They lose their captain, Stephen Crichton, 19 minutes into the game. He does a syndesmosis. He does not come back, so that's one centre. Then Anari Tuala in the second half. They lose him, the other centre. So it was a brave performance to, still be in the contest before Will Warbrick takes that intercept and runs the length right at the end of the game. I think they can hold their heads up high. The negative and the downfall out of it, or the fallout out of the game, is that Stephen Crichton won't be there. A mid-range syndesmosis that's a 6-week injury. I dare say that his season will be over. Anari Tuala's got a broken leg. They get Bronson Xerri back, which is great. And I just think there's a positive with all of this. I think they're going to be forced to make some changes, and I think it might just spark them. I think Toby Sexton will go into halfback, and that'll free up Lachlan Galvin just to play his more natural number 6 role. I think that's going to straighten their attack, and that's going to help them out a whole heap. Matt Burton, go to centres. He's a great runner of the football. He's a big body, and I actually thought he was more dangerous playing in the centres. He scored a brilliant try to get them back into the match. That covers Stephen Crichton. You get Bronson Xerri coming back in the other centre position. So all of a sudden, you're starting to look pretty healthy in the outside backs again. And then the other change I would make, I would bring Reid Marnie back into the number 9 jersey, and I'd put Bailey Hayward on the bench. And Bailey Hayward is a fantastic number 9, but I think he's even better small running forward. We see how Brandon Smith plays, and I think Brandon Smith's the same, can play dummy half, and is a really good dummy half, but the way that their leg speed and their ball playing over the advantage line, I think you can do that with Bailey Hayward and Kurt Mann. I know it's a smaller bench, but I think you can make it work, and they've done that through different stages of the year. It's drastic circumstances at the moment for the Dogs. They've won 2 of their last 7, and one of those wins were against a Penrith team that rested 16 players. So they're out of form at the moment. They need to spark something to rejuvenate their season, or it's do or die now. They don't get a second chance after this week.
Yeah, well, they do take, as we look at the 2 games just for this week, now that's Sunday when they take on the Panthers. So Bulldogs, Panthers, a core stadium. Surely we get in excess of 70,000 for this one on a Sunday afternoon.
It'll be huge. It will be absolutely huge. And Before I make my tip, I will be looking at the teams. And if Mitch Kenny is named at number 9 for the Penrith Panthers, I won't just be tipping them for this week, but I think they can make the grand final. I honestly think the Panthers can make the grand final, but they need their dummy half. He's got a hamstring injury. By all reports, it's a week-to-week proposition. The Panthers are the best at keeping their cards close to their chest with injuries. I hope he's back this week, because if he is, he makes a huge difference to this footy team. Nathan Cleary is the most influential player in this footy team, but I think Mitch Kenny is up there with Isaiah Yeo as nearly the second most influential player in this footy team. He means so much to their defence. He leads their line speed. He's so physical. He's out there for 80 minutes. And he gives service to the right people at the right time. Now, they make the first decision with the ball, the dummy halves, and if he's there, I think they can progress to the grand final. The Panthers.
Hey Billy, just something on the Panthers. What about the decision there made by Ivan Cleary with the outside backs in the use of Paul Alamotti?
Yep, big decision, because Thomas Jenkins has done a great job. The other thing I noticed with that decision, Thomas Jenkins has been playing on the left-hand side with McLean and Blaise Talangi all season, and done a wonderful job to develop into a good combination there, doing a great job, but has decided with Paul Alamotti, but doesn't put him in Jenkins' position. He puts him on the right-hand side of the field and puts Brian To'o over on that left with those two young fellas. There was something in behind it, whether it was an experience thing, whether it was he knew what the weather was going to be like over in New Zealand and needed that power out of the backfield, which Paul Alamotti, he gave the Panthers that power out of the backfield along with Brian To'o. So does he stay with that formula or does he change it up? Not too sure, but Thomas Jenkins probably a little bit hard done by, but it's still a longer season. Like, the season is still 3 weeks away.
Yeah,
things can happen in the next couple of weeks, and he might get that opportunity to get back in the footy team.
All right, so that's on Sunday, and then we've already spoken to about the Saturday night clash. Raiders at home, at least, on the 6-day backup, taking on the Sharks. Which way are you leaning for that one, Billy?
I'm leaning to the Sharks. Yep, I'm leaning towards the Sharks. I think the Sharks have less defensive deficiencies in their team at the moment. I think the Raiders have got a lot of issues with their edge defence, and not just with their right-hand edge, it's also their left. So there's a bit of work to be done there, and they're not going to get a whole heap of training time to get on the field and do it. Xavier Savage is a huge injury blow for the Raiders. Tamale's been doing okay, but he's not playing as good as he's played at the start of the season. I think he's still hampered by a knee injury. Just the way that he's moving, he's not moving as free and as damaging as he was at the start of the year. And it's only a small thing. It's sometimes not even really noticeable, but you can just see the power in him is a little bit different. And like I said, that defensive deficiencies. And if any team is going to ask questions of you with your defence, it's the Sharks. It's their halves love using the footy. Nico Hines loves being on the ball. Raiders will want to make it a real physical, tough, tight, close game, and the Sharks will want to use the football and pull them apart defensively on the edges. So it's going to be a great battle of the contrasts in style, and I'm leaning towards the Sharks. Yourself, or who do you like?
Oh, you're the expert. I just want to call the game.
You're an expert too, Salty. Who do you like?
Well, I'm really taken by what I saw from the Sharks on Saturday night. I mean, as I said earlier, we were there commentating the game alongside Gus, and they were great. I love the Sharks bench, Billy. You see for Talakai when he comes on. I think Hamlin Welle as well. I mean, they've got big, skillful forwards who just know how to not only get on top in the middle, but also help that distribution out to those guys out wide. And I'm a huge fan of Britton Nickera, and I think he'll be starting this week. I'm not too sure. I don't know if I would change it up. I tell you what, if I'm playing against him and he's starting off the bench, I'm keeping one eye on the bench and going, when's he getting on his feet? Because
you want to know when he's on the field. He's one of those guys that could just come on and first touch, he does something brilliant or runs a great line and scores a try. And when he's super fresh up against, even if it's a 25% fatigued team, that's a huge difference. So I don't know if Craig Fitzgibbon will actually change Billy Burns. He might, but I'd be surprised.
Yeah, good point. Good point. I'll tell you one thing. Been a fan of the game for a long time, and I've got great respect for the Bulldogs in the other game, and just know not to write off the wounded Bulldogs.
Yeah, absolutely. And how courageous they played too. A little bit like the Warriors for me, the Dogs. I just think that this is not a one-off. They've won 2 games in the last 7. That's, the writing's on the wall there, and that's why I think it's drastic changes for them. You can spark something. I think Reid Marnie he's a wonderful competitor. He is a little bulldog, and he was their captain only 18 months ago. It's been a bit of a fall for him, but I would actually rejuvenate the footy team. No one misses out in terms of those key positions. Bailey Hayward just goes back to the bench. It probably just releases a bit of pressure off him as well, and they just go back after their footy that they had at the start of the year. They don't get a second chance, and I think if they don't do that, well, I think the Panthers are in the box seat anyway, but like I said, Mitch Kenny, he holds the key.
Yeah, 2 great games to come this week. You're watching or listening to, whichever way you get the podcast each week. This is the Billy Slater Podcast, and we do it all thanks to Tab.
Fans always ask, Lozza, what was the best era of league? And I tell them, nothing beats the line-breaking, flick-passing, goose-stepping, Vegas-flying, turbo try-scoring, origin drought-breaking, simply the best era of footy we're in right now. And with more market stats and insights, it's easy to enjoy the best era in footy with the best app in footy.
Tab. We're on.
What's gambling really costing you? For free and confidential support, visit gamblinghelponline.org.au.
All right, now the Billy M's are done, but we've still got sort of a finals Billy M. It's the Billy Slater finals player. Billy, you'll give out your, I hope you've read the rundown, your 3, 2 and 1 after each round to determine the best finals player. Oh my goodness! Where do you go to here to give you 3, 2 and 1? We do it all thanks to Tab. Over to you.
Yep, I've got my 3. It is hard because there's a lot of good players, but I think the 3 most influential players in their footy team were. I'm going to give 1 point to Braden Trindall. I thought he put the cream on the cake. The Sharks did a great job as a footy team collectively. Everyone played their role. Ronaldo Mulitalo scored a couple, but also made the most metres out of the backfield. But Braden Trindall, when they needed points, he came up with points, and I think he deserves 1 point. 2 points goes to Nathan Cleary. Just controlled proceedings over there in New Zealand. He obviously grew up in New Zealand with his dad playing and coaching the club, and has a pretty good affinity with Mount Smart Stadium. But the way that he controlled it with his kicking game, the amount of repeat sets, and then running the ball on the last tackle to score some tries, he gets 2 points. And probably no surprise, the 3-point winner was Reece Walsh. If Reece isn't playing for the Broncos in the last 5 weeks, the Broncos don't even make finals. And if Reece doesn't play yesterday, the Broncos don't beat the Raiders. It's as simple as that. And as much of a team game it is, and you need everyone playing their role, and I'm not ignorant to that. I'm not naive to that. But he has been responsible for the victories of late, and especially yesterday. The way he come back on the field, 16 points down, he scores a try, he runs around Kyo Weeks, he doesn't even get a finger on him, and then he sets up a try with a nice cutout pass, and then he kicks a 40-20 off the very next set. It was unbelievable just to watch how good he is playing at the moment and how influential he is, which is why I think that they need to just tinker with their risk and reward a little bit, just at the start of the games. I just think they're a little bit on the conservative side, which has held them in good stead, but you're coming to go up against some good defensive teams now, and you're going to have to start putting the foot down a little bit and getting some scoreboard pressure on these teams earlier in the match.
All right, so there's the 3 2-1s from week 1 of the finals. Thanks to Tab, the NRL finals are here for the best time in sport. Tab has the best app in sport. Tab, we're on.
What's gambling really costing you? For free and confidential support, visit gamblinghelponline.org.au.
All right, let's get to the listener questions. We didn't have time for them last week, but we do this week. Casey, thank you very much for your question for Billy. So after watching week 1, is there a team that's proven they can win it all? Are the Storm or Panthers the biggest threat? That's from Casey.
I think it is so even. I can't put anyone above anyone else. Look, the Broncos and the Storm get the huge advantage. They get the advantage of having the week off and having a 2-week preparation into a prelim final. That is the biggest advantage that any of these teams have got at the moment. The one team that has actually elevated themselves to going, okay, well, yeah, no, they've gone from a team that I'm like, to a team that I'm going, okay, they can win the comp, and that's the Sharks. Just the way that they handled that pressure of the second half of the Roosters. The Roosters were really dominant in terms of the field position, and they just handled that adversity well. They defended their try line great, and that's just elevated them from, I'm not sure about them, to a team they're going, okay, I think that they can actually challenge. It's only 3 weeks to go now. I think they can challenge for the title, but I think it's as even as it's ever been.
All right, good question, Casey. Thank you. This one from Tim. Hi, Billy. How do you mentally prepare for a finals game knowing it's a sudden death match? What did you see from the Warriors' body language that showed the pressure got to them? And conversely, what was different about the Sharks? That's from Tim.
Well, I didn't see anything from the Warriors that the pressure got to them. I just think the class of personnel got to them. I didn't see any threats, really, apart from a couple of offloads and throwing the ball around. I didn't see any class moments like we saw from Trindall, like we saw from Reece Walsh, like we saw from Nathan Cleary. The class just wasn't there. In terms of preparation, that's what separates the great players from the good players, is being able to play your game under pressure moments and under situations where the result is, it really means something. Round 17, when there's only 2 points on the line, well, it doesn't mean, it's not the be-all and end-all. There's next week. But when you're playing in an elimination final and the result means something and you still have the courage to go after your game, that's what the great players do. And those great players that I just spoke about, Ben Hunt, kicking that field goal, Nathan Cleary, Reece Walsh, Braden Trindall, they're handling the pressure under a situation where the result is everything.
All right, thank you very much for all of your viewer questions. Now it's time for our Ampol Power Surge for this week. Billy, your top 3 finals moments can be as a player in the Channel 9 commentary box, can also be just simply as a fan of the game. Your top 3 moments in finals that come to mind.
I actually read this one of this weekend. But you know what? I'm going to just throw some out there off the top of my head. Yep. One finals moment that sticks vividly in my mind was the 2008 semi-final against the Brisbane Broncos, and we were under all sorts of pressure. We were down on the scoreboard. It was only a couple of minutes to go, and Greg Inglis ended up scoring a try, to win the game for us. But Sika Manu come up with a tackle, dislodged the ball, and a play later, Greg Inglis is putting it down in the corner. So that was a semi-final that I really remember. You remember the preliminary finals as well. The ones to get into the grand final, they're ones that the pressure's all on the line to get into that big grand final. We've had a couple of them. We had one against the Broncos at Etihad Stadium, another one against Parramatta. I think that was 2007 before the grand final against Manly. So, yeah, those big preliminary finals are great. The one as a commentator, I was in the commentary box when Dominic Young ran the length at Newcastle, McDonald Jones Stadium a couple of years ago against the Canberra Raiders. The sea of red and blue was all standing as one as Big Dom Young was just striding down the sideline. That was a moment, and sitting next to one of the great Novocastrians in Joey Johns, that was an electric feeling.
Yeah, I remember that shot of Dom Young and everyone just rising as they went past them. It was just... That was
incredible, wasn't it?
Iconic moment. Yeah, absolutely. So many wonderful moments in finals, that's for sure. And you're right, as a fan of the game, I love watching prelims. I think grand final qualifiers, because it all goes on the line, doesn't it? They're some of the best games we get to see each year.
My three from this week were Will Warbrick's intercept.
Yep.
Reece Walsh. He had about 15 moments. And
Which
Ben
one?
Hunt's field goal. I thought that was a great moment for Benny Hunt. So, a real confidence booster for Benny, going back to Brisbane and sealing the first semi-final, putting his team into a preliminary final.
All right, that is our Ampol Power Surge. Whether you're cheering from the sidelines or from the living room, Ampol's got your back on and off the field. Proud to power Australia's own sporting nation. So, Billy, we get set now for week 2 of the NRL finals, also week 1 of the NRLW finals this week. It's a spectacular start to September, and, mate, I get the feeling it's just going to get better and better, is it not?
Oh, I can't wait. 2 huge games this weekend. Saturday night, Canberra up against Cronulla. That's going to be a wonderful game, and the winner of that will head down to Melbourne and take on the Storm, and then the Sunday afternoon game against Panthers and Bulldogs. That's going to be a belter. Huge game at Accor Stadium. Winner goes up to Suncorp Stadium to try and book a place in the NRL Grand Final. It is only one corner away now. It's not far. We're at the home straight, and the whips are cracking.
And just for those people listening to us in Sydney, even if you're a neutral, go to Accor Stadium on Sunday because aside from the grand final, it's the only other game left in Sydney. So head along, make it a sellout on Sunday, surely.
Yep, I'll be there. I will be there.
Yeah, it'll be terrific. You have a great week, Billy, and we'll do it all again next week.
Can't wait. Thanks, Salty.
Thanks, Billy. That's Billy Slater. I'm Peter Psaltis. This has been the Billy Slater Podcast. All thanks to Tab. New episodes out throughout the season, each and every Monday.